Hello, everyone. Welcome to 10-Minute English with May. And today we are going to talk about our adjective clause being turned into a participle phrase. And that is why our participle phrase is also called a reduced clause. Essentially, a participle phrase is modified from an adjective clause or an adverbial clause. And so keep one thing in mind. An adjective clause has subject verb, same with an adverbial clause because it's a clause, it has subject verb. But when it is being reduced to a phrase, like a participle phrase, it no longer has subject verb. So when you change something from clause to a phrase, take out the subject and change the verb to the correct participle. All right. So as a quick reminder, we have two kinds of participles. They're both adjective function, and we don't remember participles, gerund and infinitive, they're all verbals, but they are not verbs. Okay, so if you have a sentence with verbal but no verbs, it is not a sentence, it's a fragment. So a present participle like knowing and past participle like known, they modify nouns and pronouns. The difference is a present participle is active. It is the thing or the person that is causing certain emotion or starting certain reaction, whereas past participle is passive, which is why it is often followed by the preposition by. All right, so again, as a quick reminder, something that is boring or someone who is boring causes boredom, so you are bored. Something that's frightening, like a ghost, frightens you, so you are frightened. Something that is exciting, like a game, excites you, so you are excited. Okay, so now in our example sentences, let's first identify our adjective clauses. And remember, our adjective clause starts with something called relative pronouns or relative adverbs, depending on what you modify. So relative pronouns include who, whom, whose, which, that, and relative adverbs include when, where, and why. So in number one, procedures that become effective next year will determine that company's vacation policy. Okay, so we use that with no comma because this is essential. Remember, that is always essential. Okay, so the first thing we do is we take out the subject, which is the relative pronoun that. The second thing we do is we look at the verb become. And since become is an active verb, not passive, we change it to becoming. And that would be our reduced clause or participle phrase. Procedures becoming effective next year will determine that company's vacation policy. Okay, and same thing with number two, except in this case, we have non-essential adjective clause with comma, which, right? Which is always non-essential. And of course, we cross out our subject relative pronoun, which, and block, like become, it is active voice verb. So we change it to blocking and not blocked. So deciduous trees blocking the hot summer sun and cold winter winds should be planted. All right, and number three, my grandfather who lived in El Paso, Texas, was a trail boss and horse trader in his youth. So we take out the relative pronoun who, and lived is active because he is actually the one doing the living, right? So living in El Paso, Texas. And again, this is non-essential with the two inserted commas. Okay, number four. It is I who am at a disadvantage in this debate. So who is referring to I? And remember, our verb of the adjective clause depends on our antecedent, which is I, the noun that we modify. So I am, so who am. But again, we cross out the who and we change the am to active, right? Which is being, all right? Okay, so it is I being at a disadvantage in this debate. Although it is true that we often prefer not using being, okay? Sometimes it's considered fluff, meaning it doesn't add much meaning or context to the word, to the sentence. Okay, number 5. In the not so distant future, the university will have a new fine arts center, which a wealthy alumna has offered to finance. So if you're not familiar with alumna, that is simply the female version of alumnus, right? And the plural for alumnus is alumni, right? And a plural for alumna is alumnae, A-E, like larva, larvae, antenna, antennae, okay? And it is a Latin-based word. But either way, when we take a look here, what is so special about this sentence? Well, actually, the which here is no longer the subject. So it's actually a wealthy alumna has offered to finance the art center. So this is our object. Okay. So, well, we could change it to a participle phrase, but we will have to rephrase that. So generally speaking, when your relative pronoun is not the subject, it is the object, we prefer to keep it that way. We prefer to keep it an adjective clause. All right, so keep. Okay. And that is pretty much the key takeaway. So remember, a reduced clause is a participle phrase because it comes from an adjective clause, an adverbial clause. And you cross out the subject, you change the participle, change the verb into the correct participle, depending on whether it is active or passive. And of course, you want to keep the same punctuation, meaning that if originally it is essential, no punctuation, no commas, you don't add any commas. If it's not essential, you keep the commas. All right, and that's it for today. Bye-bye.